In the history of professional cycling, there are riders who win, and then there are riders who change the game entirely. Riders who transcend the sport and become something more, legends, icons. Peter Sagan made us fall in love with cycling all over again. In an era when the sport desperately needed a hero, he gave us something better. He gave us joy. Pure, unfiltered, infectious joy. But every story has complications, controversies, moments that tarnish even the brightest legacies. And when the powers finally fade, we're left asking, was it enough? Did they give us everything? Or were their dreams left unfulfilled? Peter Sagan grew up in a working-class family. His father drove trucks, his mother raised the children. There is no cycling dynasty here, no grand plan for greatness. Just a kid, his brother, and a couple of bikes. Quote, "My brother persuaded me to try cycling, and I realized it was the best thing in the world. People thought we were strange, but I couldn't have cared less." By 17, Sagan was already a junior mountain bike world champion. Twice. In 2007 and 2008, he dominated the off-road scene. But the road was calling. The big money, the big races. In 2009, he made the leap from dirt and roots to tarmac and pelotons. Then, in 2010, he signed with Liquigas, a professional team willing to take a chance on a relatively unknown teenager from a country that hadn't produced a star. 20 years old, Neo-Pro. His first major races. It's a 2010 Paris-Nice, and the rookie scores 2 stage wins and the points classification. Tour California, 2 more stage wins and another points classification. The cycling world was now on notice. 2012, the Tour de France, Liège, Belgium, the grandest race in cycling. For 109 years, the Tour had been cycling's ultimate proving ground. And now, at just 22 years old, Peter Sagan was about to make it his playground. 3 stage wins, back-to-back victories, and then another on stage 7. Each one was different. A bunch sprint, a reduced sprint after climbs, an uphill finish. He didn't just win, he was dominating different types of stages. He beat the pure sprinters on flat roads. He dropped them on hills. He outsmarted them in technical finales. And through it all, the green jersey, the points classification, was never in doubt. At just 22 years old, Peter Sagan had found his calling. The green jersey would become his new identity. It was a crown that fit perfectly. See, Peter Sagan was selling something cycling had been missing for a while: joy and excitement. In a 2012 press conference, Sagan explained his philosophy. Quote, "To be honest, cycling is a boring sport to me. Boring to watch. When it's on TV, I watch only the last 5 kilometers or the final sprint. Nothing more. I just can't stand watching it for 4 or 5 hours. That's why I do these wheelies and victory celebrations at the finish. I do it all for people, to encourage their interest in the sport, to liven it up, to make it at least a bit exciting to watch. And yes, maybe then they'll think, I hope Sagan wins today so we can see what he's got for us this time. I don't mean to show disrespect to my competitors. I only want to bring some thrill into the sport because that's what cycling lacks and needs so desperately. There will always be someone to criticize me for what I do, but I don't care what they think." In the age of social media, Peter Sagan became cycling's first true viral superstar. His celebrations were seen by cycling fans, and they were clipped, shared, memed, and spread across the internet. YouTube compilations of his wheelies racked up millions of views. Instagram accounts dedicated to his personality and funny moments gained thousands of followers. He was reaching people who had never watched a bike race in their lives, and some of them became fans of him and of cycling. Sponsors lined up, magazine covers followed, fashion shoots, TV appearances. Peter Sagan had become a brand, a personality, a crossover star in a sport that had produced precious few of them. He dated Miss Slovakia. He launched his own fashion line. He appeared in ads selling everything from bikes to banks. Of course, not every moment was perfect. At the 2013 Tour of Flanders podium ceremony, Sagan made an inappropriate gesture towards one of the podium hostesses. The backlash was swift and deserved. He apologized, claimed it was meant to be playful, and accepted responsibility. His sense of humor so often his greatest asset, had crossed the line. But even controversies couldn't dim the star for long. At races across Europe, attendance surged. Organizers knew that if Peter Sagan was in the start list, the crowds would come. They wanted to see the show, and Sagan delivered every single time. But the best was yet to come, because Peter Sagan was about to achieve something to prove that he was the sport's greatest champion. September 27th, 2015, Richmond, Virginia, USA. The World Road Race Championship, the Rainbow Jersey. In cycling, there are few prizes more coveted, and no symbol more powerful. The world champion wears those sacred bands on every race, every day, for an entire year. It's a badge of honor that announces to every peloton, I am the best. And Peter Sagan wanted it more than anything he'd ever wanted in his life. The course was 16 laps of a punchy circuit through downtown Richmond, 260 kilometers total, over 2,000 meters of climbing. Short, steep hills that would shatter the pure sprinters. Technical descents that would test bike handling. A slight uphill finish that favored powerful riders. On paper, it was perfect for Peter Sagan. But on paper means nothing when every nation on Earth is trying to stop you. It's the final time of Liberty Hill now, as the peloton takes the right-hander onto cobbles. The crowd in Richmond is absolutely massive. Every cycling fan in America has made the pilgrimage here. Right now, what matters is that Zdeněk Stybar, former cyclocross world champion, is absolutely flying on the attack. John Degenkolb on his wheel, Greg Van Avermaet is closing the gap as well. But it's all back together after they crest the top. They sneak down a descent, past a CVS in a parking lot, and then a right-hander, and 23rd Street calls. It's Van Avermaet going in again at the bottom, but Sagan has chosen this section, this hill, this moment to make his move. He's around, then past, then has a gap of just a few bike lengths as they hit the descent. And Sagan goes into the super tuck position, trying to make every aero move he can, taking the corners like a MotoGP rider, and the gap extends. Just 1.5k to go. A slight downhill towards the final climb of Governor Street. The peloton is not far behind. Right-hander, 1k to go. Sagan is in pain, mouth agape, calves and thighs pushing with everything he has. The shoulders are rolling, and he takes the final corner. Tens of thousands are here. The crowd is 5, 6, 7 people deep, and everyone is losing their minds. This is Sagan, a hero, a rock star. Everyone is for Sagan. The peloton is getting closer, but this is his day. He looks back and pushes a little more. Then he celebrates. The greatest of all time finally became a world champion. The question for Sagan was, could he do it again? October 16th, 2016, Doha, Qatar, the hottest world championships in history. On the open roads of the Arabian Peninsula, it felt like racing through an oven. The course was pancake flat, exposed to relentless sun and desert wind. 256 kilometers with nowhere to hide. Within the first 100 kilometers, riders began to abandon. By the halfway point, over half the field had quit. With 20k remaining, fewer than 40 riders were left. The plans to control Sagan had evaporated with the riders who'd abandoned. Now it was pure racing. No tactics, no team games, just the strongest riders left and one champion to beat. When it mattered, he was exactly where he needed to be. Front row, clear side of the line. The sprint launched with 300 meters to go, and Sagan went with it. Alongside him was Alexander Kristoff, Michael Matthews, Edvald Bosenhagen, riders who challenged him before. But this time, like every time before, they were sprinting for second place. Arms wide, head back, pure elation. He'd done it. Back-to-back world champion. He was the world's best rider, period. He became the first rider to retain the world title since Paolo Bettini in 2006 and 2007. As Peter Sagan left Qatar, he carried more than a jersey. He was carrying history on his shoulders. And 1 year from now, in the mountains of Norway, he would have a chance to achieve the impossible. September 24th, 2017, Bergen, Norway. A city on the edge of the North Sea, surrounded by 7 mountains, famous for rain. And on this day, Bergen delivered. This was the hardest World Championship course in a decade. 267 kilometers, with over 4,600 meters of climbing. 12 laps of a punishing circuit that included 3 climbs a lap. This wasn't a race for sprinters. This is a race for climbers, for warriors, for riders who could suffer like no other. The cycling world looked at this course and declared Peter Sagan's streak finished. Too hard for him, they said. Too much climbing for someone who built his career on rolling classics. He'd won twice on courses that suited him, but Bergen would expose his limits. Bergen would crown a new champion. By the final 2 laps, fewer than 30 riders remained. And still, Peter Sagan was there, positioned, alert, waiting for his moment. The final ascent of Salmon Hill. The race would be won or lost here. The group was down to 12 riders. These were the strongest men in cycling on this day. Alejandro Valverde, Michael Matthews, Gianni Moscon, and Peter Sagan refusing to let go. 500 meters to go. Sagan was 5th wheel. Not ideal, but not impossible. Sagan responded instantly. He came from behind like a freight train. With 100 meters remaining, he drew level. With 50 meters left, he was ahead. At the line, there was no doubt. 3 consecutive world championships. History. In cycling's long and storied history and storied past, only one man had ever achieved this in the professional era. Eddy Merckx, the greatest rider who ever lived. And now, 43 years later, Peter Sagan had joined him in cycling's most exclusive club. He also became the first rider to win 3 titles on 3 different continents, and at age 27, the youngest rider ever to win 3 world championships. The cycling world erupted. Headlines proclaimed the birth of a legend. Social media exploded with tributes. Even rival teams and riders paid homage. This was transcendent. Peter Sagan had achieved what most thought impossible, and at just 27 years old, he seemed unstoppable. But there's more in cycling than a world championship. The monuments. The 5 greatest one-day classics in cycling history. Peter Sagan was hunting for them. The Tour of Flanders, 260 kilometers of Belgian hell. 18 climbs, many of them cobbled. Stretches of pave that shake bikes apart and shatter bodies. For over a century, since 1913, it has crowned cycling's toughest warriors. This is Belgium's race. It's sacred ground. And it's April 3rd, 2016, the 100th edition of the Tour of Flanders. Over 250,000 spectators lined the roads. Peter Sagan wore the rainbow jersey he'd won 5 months earlier in Richmond. He was a world champion, the best rider on earth. But Flanders had never seen a Slovakian winner. In fact, Flanders had rarely seen any winner from outside the traditional cycling nations. This was enemy territory, and Sagan was hunting. From the start, the race was brutal. Crashes tore through the peloton in the opening kilometers. Greg Van Avermaet, one of the favorites, sat tearful by the roadside, his collarbone broken, his dreams shattered. Before the race even truly began, the contenders were falling. With 55 kilometers to go, the race hit the Quaremont for the penultimate time. This is where Flanders is won and lost, where legends are made. And this is where the race exploded. Vandenberg attacked, Dylan van Baarle followed. Behind them, the peloton fractured as riders fought to stay in contention. On the false flat roads, with 25k remaining, 2 world champions made their move. Michael Kwiatkowski, the 2014 champion, accelerated hard. Peter Sagan went with him, and only one rider could follow, Sepp van Mark, the Belgian hardman who'd come close so many times before. Riders cleared the field. The race for Flanders would be decided here. Everything depended on the Paterberg, the steepest, most vicious climb in Flanders, 1 kilometer at a 20% gradient, the final judge of who deserves to win. Sagan attacked, a seated acceleration that looked deceptively easy. Van Mark, the Belgian who'd been so strong, suddenly had nothing left. His legs betrayed him. Sagan rode away. Behind him, Cancellara caught Van Mark at the top of the climb and immediately set off in pursuit. Spartacus, giving everything for one last glory. But the world champion would never be seen again. Arms tucked tight over his bars, Sagan time trialed towards the finish. 15 seconds. That was his margin at the top of the Paterberg. And in the flat kilometers that remained, he stretched it further. Behind him, Cancellara and Van Mark were together, but the gap only grew. Peter Sagan crossed the line alone, arms in triumph, and then the trademark, a wheelie. The world champion had won the Tour of Flanders. Quote, "I feel very good, I'm very happy. It was a super hard race from start to finish, always full gas. It's very hard to work with other guys because no one wants to work with me. So it's better to drop everyone." Peter Sagan had conquered the sacred cobbles of Flanders, his first monument victory. And he had done it the hard way, attacking, dropping everyone, riding alone to glory. In Flanders, how you win matters as much as winning itself. And on this day, the world champion had won perfectly. We jump to July 4th, 2017. It's stage 4 of the Tour de France. Peter Sagan is wearing the rainbow jersey, chasing his 6th consecutive green jersey to match Eric Zabel's record. He's at the peak of his powers, the undisputed king of cycling. And then in a split second, everything changed. The sprint was chaotic. The first crash took down race leader Grant Thomas and a dozen others. The sprint continued through the chaos. With 200 meters remaining, the surviving sprinters were fighting for a position at max speed. Mark Cavendish, the 30-time Tour stage winner, was trying to find space. And then contact. Sagan's right elbow extended into Cavendish's path. Cav slammed into the barriers at 60 an hour. His bike flew one direction, his body another. 2 more riders went down over him. The carnage was instant and horrifying. Cavendish lay on the ground, his arm in obvious agony. Medical staff rushed to help. Sagan, having stayed upright, crossed the line in second place, unaware of the severity of what had happened. But the cameras had caught everything. After the stage, Sagan went to Cavendish's team bus to apologize. He insisted it was unintentional, that he hadn't seen Cavendish coming. Quote, "It was a crazy sprint. It wasn't the first one like that. It won't be the last one like that." But the race jury saw something different. They saw dangerous riding. They saw a world champion allegedly using his elbow recklessly. They saw a choice that had sent one of cycling's greatest riders to the hospital with a fractured shoulder blade. The initial punishment was relegation and an 80-point penalty, but 2 hours later, the decision changed. The race jury president announced, quote, "We decided to disqualify Peter Sagan from the Tour de France as he endangered some of his colleagues seriously in the final meter of the sprint. Not just relegated, not just penalized, expelled from the race entirely. The first world champion disqualified from the Tour since 1998. His bid for his 6th green jersey over. His Tour de France finished." Cavendish's injuries forced him to abandon. His tour was over too. The incident sparked fierce debate. Some defended Sagan, saying elbows are common in sprints. Others condemned him, saying a world champion should know better. Sagan's team appealed to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. The appeal was denied. Months later, the UCI would acknowledge that additional video footage, not available to race officials at the time, suggested the contact was unintentional, a racing incident rather than deliberate aggression. But by then, the damage was done. Peter Sagan's 2017 Tour de France would be remembered not for victories, but a moment of chaos. Stage 5 started without the rainbow jersey, without the defending green jersey champion, without Peter Sagan. For the first time in 6 years, the Tour de France rolled on without him. April 8th, 2018, Paris-Roubaix, the hell of the North. 10 months had passed since the Cavendish incident. 10 months of questions, doubts, criticism from legends who'd questioned whether Sagan still had what it took for the monuments. Yes, he'd won his 3rd world championship in Bergen the previous September. But today, on the brutal cobblestones of northern France, Peter Sagan would either silence those doubts or confirm them. 257 kilometers, 29 sectors of bone-rattling cobblestones. Ancient pave that hasn't changed in a century. An early breakaway went clear. 9 riders, including Sylvain Dillier, the Swiss champion from AG2R La Mondiale, built a gap. But behind them, the race was already claiming victims. Into the Arenberg Forest, the most feared section of pave. The peloton was down to 50 riders when they entered those dark, cobbled shadows. Marcus Burkhardt led for Bora Hansgrohe, keeping Sagan safe. Philippe Gilbert attacked. The race exploded. But Sagan's teammates had done their job. The world champion was positioned perfectly. He was clear of crashes, clear of punctures, waiting for his moment. With 55k to go, a recovering Greg van Avermaet sensed opportunity. The Belgian champion launched an attack, trying to escape alone, just like at Flanders 2 years earlier. Once again, he lacked the power to stay clear. And just like at Flanders, Peter Sagan saw his chance. As Van Avermaet was caught, Sagan attacked. The world champion pushed on the pedals and a gap opened instantly. Irony dripped from every pedal stroke. He'd attacked from almost the same spot where Tom Boonen had won in 2012. Boonen, who'd criticized Sagan for months. Now Sagan was letting his legs do the talking, and no one could answer. With 51 kilometers remaining, Sagan caught the early breakaway. He swept up the remnants one by one. Only Dillier could stay with him. The Swiss champion, who'd been riding alone at the front for over 200 kilometers, suddenly had the company of the rainbow jersey, and together they pressed on. At one point, the gap was just 43 seconds, but the world champion was in a league of his own. Cut a commanding figure as he led through sector after sector, with Dillier matching him pedal stroke for pedal stroke. Behind them, the chase was falling apart. The gap grew and grew and grew. The warm roar of the crowd enveloped them. The Swiss champion swung right onto the track, taking the high banking. This was his surface, his specialty, and he gave it everything. One final desperate effort to shock the world. But not even an underdog story could hold back the inevitable. The last 75 meters unfolded in slow motion, a chance to dwell on everything that had led to this moment. The quickset domination, the tale of Flanders, the criticism, the redemption. And finally, a flash of rainbow colors as Peter Sagan powered past. Arms raised in triumph. His second monument. His first Paris-Roubaix. The first rider in 37 years to win the Hell of the North wearing the rainbow jersey. Quote, "This is amazing. I have to say that this year I was never involved in a crash, I never flat tired, I saved energy, and then just did one step forward. I attacked. I kept going until the finish. I stayed much better this year than in all the other years that I had finished Paris-Roubaix, where I was much more tired than today. I am very happy. It's an amazing feeling." After everything, the disqualification, the controversy, the questions, the criticism, Peter Sagan had answered with the only language that actually matters in cycling. His legs had done the talking, and on this day, in the Hell of the North, they had spoken louder than anyone else. Through it all, the World Championships, the monuments, even the disqualification, Peter Sagan's dominance of the Tour de France points classification continued. Year after year, stage after stage, the green jersey was his personal property. 2012, 2013, 14, 15, 16, 18, 2018, his sixth, equaling Eric Zappel's record. 2019, green jersey, his seventh, breaking the all-time record. 7 green jerseys, more than any rider in Tour history, an achievement so extraordinary that it may never be equaled. Think about what this means. 7 years of racing every July, 21 stages each year, mountains where sprinters suffer and quit, flat stages of dangerous high-speed chaos. Through crashes, illness, bad luck, and the constant evolution of the sport, Peter Sagan emerged victorious 7 times. The consistency was inhuman. 12 Tour de France stage victories across those 7 years, countless podium finishes, intermediate sprints won from breakaways, points collected on mountain stages when pure sprinters had long abandoned. This was tactical mastery. This was cycling intelligence at its highest level. But by 2018 and 2019, something was changing. The stage wins were harder to come by. The celebrations were less exuberant. The wheelies became rarer. The joy that had defined Peter Sagan's career seemed to be fading, replaced by something harder to define. Wariness, maybe. The weight of expectations. The grinding reality that champions age. Even legends slow down. A new generation was rising. Riders who'd grown up watching Peter Sagan, who learned from his tactics, and who now wanted to dethrone the king. The sport moves fast. Today's champion is tomorrow's aging veteran. Everyone knows this. But knowing it doesn't make it easier to accept. 2020. The world had changed. COVID-19 had shut down sports worldwide. The Tour de France, postponed from July to September, finally rolled out under strange circumstances. Empty roads, limited spectators, an eerie atmosphere. But the racing was still fierce, still dangerous, and still unforgiving. September 9th, 2020, stage 11. A narrow, technical sprint finish. Peter Sagan was struggling. No stage wins yet. No green jersey. At 30 years old, he was fighting to prove he still belonged at the top. With 500 meters to go, positioned poorly, boxed in, Sagan made his move. As Wout van Aert came alongside, Sagan's elbow extended. Van Aert was forced to brake hard. Cameras caught everything. Again. Wout was furious. He raised his middle finger towards Sagan as they crossed the line. After the stage, he told reporters, quote, "My opinion is I sprinted in a completely straight line at the right on the barriers. He just tried to create space for himself, and for me, you're not allowed to do that. It's already dangerous enough." Sagan defended himself. Quote, "I found myself on the right side of the road. I just saw a little space and I tried to pass. That's all." He later added, "I have to accept it. I did my own sprint. I was fighting to survive myself." The commissaires acted swiftly. Sagan was relegated from his finishing position to last place in the peloton. Sam Bennett of Ireland would go on to win the points classification. The results told the story with brutal clarity. 2020, no stage wins set the tour for the first time since 2014. 2022, one win at the Slovakian National Championships. Races where Peter Sagan had once been untouchable now saw him finish in the anonymous middle of the pack. And perhaps most painful of all was the change in the peloton itself. Other riders stopped watching him, stopped marking him, stopped fearing him. Peter Sagan had fallen from the top to somewhere in the middle. Still professional, still respected, but no longer feared. And for a champion, that's a kind of death. The 2023 season was a struggle. In June, preparing for his final Tour de France, Sagan told Cycling News, quote, "The Tour de France is always too hard to get emotional about. It's always too hard to get emotional about it all. You never ride the Tour for fun or as a farewell. It was an honest assessment. There would be no fairy tale ending. Just a professional doing his job one last time." His 12th Tour de France came and went without a stage win, without the green jersey. He finished the race in Paris, which was an achievement in itself, but the magic was gone. The wheelies had stopped. The celebrations had faded. What remained was a professional cyclist going through the motions. At the end of 2023, Peter Sagan retired from professional road racing. When you look at it, Peter Sagan's career was never just about perfect endings. It was about the journey, the joy, the moments that made us believe anything was possible. So how do we remember Peter Sagan? 3-time world champion, 7-time Tour de France green jersey winner, 2 monument victories, 121 professional wins, 12 Tour de France stage victories. But is a legacy defined by what you won or by how you made people feel? Peter Sagan made people, made me, feel alive. Made them laugh, made them smile, made them believe that sport could still be joyful. For a while, he changed the game, he changed the conversation, and Peter Sagan changed cycling forever.